everyone, and welcome to our Peer Perspective series. Today we are talking about pregnancy after HIE. My name is Jen Schaefer. I am the social worker here at Hope for HIE. When we talk about pregnancy after HIE, there can be lots of thoughts and feelings like fear, hope, anger, grief, joy, and sometimes these things can all occur at once. I have two panelists here that are going to just talk about their lived experiences. This is not medical advice. And you will also just see there is no one right way to feel or to move forward through this process. So I would like to just start out by introducing Sarah and Susie. If you want to just say a little bit about yourself, and then we can dive into this topic.
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Sarah Shaw. I have two kiddos. I have two little boys. My HIE kiddo is 5 years old, and my youngest is two and a half. And we became part of the Hope for HIE community shortly after birth. When we were in the NICU, we were doing the Googling and everything else that you can possibly do when you're sitting in those waiting rooms and in the room and at home at night. And we've been Hustle Hopes, and I'm a hospital ambassador for the Madison Network. So we're really lucky to have this connection.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'm Susie, and I also have two boys. My older son is Oliver. He is 10, and he's my HIE kid. And then my younger son's Nico. He's 7. No, he just turned 8. Sorry, he's 8. So yeah, we've been on the roller coaster for a decade now, and yeah, it's been a wild ride. I first got connected with Hope for HIE. I don't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in that first year of intensive trauma after Oliver's birth injury. And yeah, it's been an amazing support and community to tap into for my family and for me over the years. And a couple years ago, I became a peer mentor, and yeah, I love the organization, wholeheartedly believe in the mission. So I'm glad to be here today.
Very good. Thank you, Susie. Thank you both of you, to both of you, for coming today and just sharing some of your experiences with this topic. I think first we'll kind of look at kind of deciding how to grow and when to grow your family after you've experienced something such as like Susie, you put it, that birth trauma of having a child diagnosed with HIE at birth. Like, when did you first consider another pregnancy? Were there thoughts or feelings? I guess what helped you feel ready? If either of you would like to start.
We had a long fertility journey with our first. So Kieran, our HIE kiddo, was our 7th pregnancy. It was years and years. We started in 2016, and then he was a COVID baby. So you put that on top of everything. And so he was an IVF baby too. So we had these embryos that we knew were in the freezer as well. And so that was always in the back of our mind we always knew that we wanted to use them. We were going to use them. We were going to, grow our family as much as we could. But then to go through something like that, it's always that question of, are we ready? Can we do this again? What happens? And my husband was ultimately, are you going to be okay? Because this is traumatic for you. You experience things, So there was always this thing for us that we knew we were going to. It was just a matter of when we were both ready. So it just kind of, for us, came about a little bit more organically that we were both ready. And I think it was also that we knew we had those embryos waiting for us. So our situation was a little bit different. I'd also say that Kieran had more mild outcomes with his HIE. So he was around 2 years old. And then we were going through the speech, going through the OT and everything else. And we did the birth to 3, and things were progressing fairly okay. So we were able to take a breath, which we weren't expecting to be able to do that. And so being able to take those breaths, we were ready to kind of take the next step. So that was kind of that was what did it for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have some similarities in that it wasn't until I could take a breath in that we even considered it. My son Oliver is on the more severe side. He has, the laundry list of diagnoses, and the first couple years were very, very, very hard. Trying to get him diagnosed, stabilized, medicated, just trying to be okay with like basics of like swallowing, sleeping, breathing, those types of things. So the first couple years were really intense, and there was really no room to consider. There was no room, there was no energy, there was no sleep, there was no bandwidth. So it wasn't even a consideration for the first couple years. But then in year 2, things stabilized for him, and we kind of hit our stride, and it was pretty organic at that time. Again, like you said, Sarah, my husband and I were on the same page, which I know is, I think from talking to a lot of community members, it's somewhat of an outlier situation. I think oftentimes in the grief process, the 2 partners are not necessarily lined up in their timing of when they're ready to dive in and potentially expose themselves to another trauma. But that wasn't the issue with my husband and I. We were both kind of just ready, and I wouldn't even say there was a lot of fear actually going into the trying to get pregnant part. It was pretty organic. The fear came once I was pregnant, and I was like, oh no, like, hope that doesn't happen again. And so, yeah.
So it sounds like you guys both couples were on the same page around similar times. I guess, can you talk about what some of those next steps were? So emotionally, you felt like ready, let's try this. What were some of your next steps in regards to working with your medical teams, advocating for yourself, knowing that, and if you want to speak to your first pregnancies versus, going into the subsequent pregnancy, knowing what happened at birth?
Susie, you want to go ahead on this one?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when I got pregnant with Oliver, there was really no fear. I was super confident. I was like of a very natural mindset. I was like, my body's got this. There was a whole different ball game. And then, with Oliver, and then everything went completely wrong. And so going into my second pregnancy, I was extremely aware of all the things that could go wrong. So a lot of things, I felt the need to change basically everything that I did in the first pregnancy. I wanted to be at like the highest level trauma center with a level 4 NICU or whatever, however the grades are, I can't remember. I wanted, a very reputable OBGYN. I wanted extra testing. I had to change medical groups. I had to rearrange insurances. I toured hospitals, and that in and of itself was a whole process because, you know, I would just have meltdowns during the introductions because I was back in a hospital and I was facing all these life or death decisions, what it felt like to me. So that it was really hard choosing where I was going to feel safe, whose hands I was going to feel safe in, and kind of trying to piece together confidence again, facing another birth after what happened with my first. And I only have 2 living children, but I've gone on to have several miscarriages. So I've been pregnant again and again. And I have to say, like, interestingly, the older I've gotten and the longer I've been on the HIE journey, my fear in the subsequent pregnancies was exponentially higher. So I just wanted to mention that because, you know, I think it's different for everyone in every stage, you know, and just what you've dealt with and what comes up, you know, each time.
Yeah, thank you. Did you feel like the OB providers and the doctors that you were interviewing or looking at, were they open to, you know, working with you and understanding of the trauma that you had been through? Did you get extra scans, testing, more observation than you did previously?
I mean, that was part of I definitely like doctor shopped for my second OB/GYN. I interviewed several and I went until I found a person who listened to me, didn't invalidate what I had been through. The issue with HIE births is that oftentimes a lot of us we don't have a reason why our child was injured. There's no concrete reason. And so you're not necessarily considered high risk. And so I was not considered high risk. And so like to get the extra scans was advocacy on my part and finding a doctor who would agree to that, you know, really honestly just to make me feel comfortable, I feel like, because there wasn't really any medical justification for the extra scans, but I did see a high risk specialist.
Well, good for you to advocate for yourself and what you needed.
Yeah.
Sarah, how about you?
Well, and the advocating piece is hard, and it shouldn't be. So interestingly enough, I was scared even in the beginning of my pregnancy with Kieran. I think having miscarriages enough before Kieran, I was just scared to even get to, you know, viability. I was scared to get to delivery. And so once I was there at the hospital, I knew I had a great team. I knew I was at the best, you know, I knew I was at a great hospital and I knew they had a great NICU and I was going to be covered. Everything was going to be great. Again, it was COVID, so that was scary. But it was meconium aspiration for Kieran. And so there was infection there, which led to pneumonia as well, you know, and so they were quick and I was lucky to have that. And so it could have been a lot worse. And so there was that in me that was like, I am in the right place for this hospital. They were very quick. It could have been worse, but what was missed, you know? So given everything else, I didn't necessarily feel comfortable shopping around for other doctors. I didn't feel comfortable going through the interview process and doing all that, just because they knew my history and they knew my baby's history. And there were complications with me that they also knew that history. So I ended up staying with my team of doctors. But then I was very clear about my concerns and they were able to do extra scans. Granted, a lot of it was because of the complications that I personally had, but I mean, it also helped for me to be able to see the baby as well the second time around. So, but but I also was very clear, like I needed to make sure that there was, the NICU crash cart ready to go. I just needed to know that there was like, they were ready. There was this, and I knew what could happen. And I knew the possibilities this time. And there was just, how would you know that meconium aspiration could be a possibility and infection and fever should not be it was weird and it was wild. And I remember hoping to go into that second delivery. And I was, there were parts of me that were angry to have to like worry about that. So it was kind of my redemption song, and like, yes, we did it and it was beautiful and I loved it, but it was also sad because this is what I missed with my first. There was also anger because this is just there was a lot of missed things. And there was a lot of therapy that led up to it. I did go to therapy, and she had suggested a doula for help with medical decisions along the way, to kind of be that medical jargon buffer, to slow things down, to give us time to talk, to understand, and also for my husband to be a sportscaster. She said, you just need somebody to like verbalize what is going on in the room so that everybody's on the same page. It helped immensely. In my case, things happened where, and Jennifer knows the story, I think Susie heard it as well. My doula ended up passing out and not making it through the actual birth, but that doesn't happen to everybody. So, but let me tell you, the doula was wonderful when she was there and when she lasted.
When she was conscious, she was wonderful.
When she was conscious and there, and it was great to have that outside person to just say what was happening and what was going on and slow things down and bring peace, and to give my husband a way to just, he knows what's going on, but just to reiterate what was going on and just feel like there was some sense of control with us in the room, because a lot of things happen and sometimes you do feel like you're losing control, and that's not fun after you go through something so traumatic. And when everything is spinning around like they did on that day, you need to have that sense of control. So that was the other thing that was really, really helpful when it lasted. But yeah, I did appreciate that recommendation from my therapist as well.
I think that
Oh, go ahead, Susie.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think your story speaks to such an important theme on this topic, which is like, so many of us feel like we need to have control going into a pregnancy after an HIE experience. You can try everything that you can try to have control, but ultimately your doula might pass out or like something, and I think that is the scary part of navigating pregnancy after HIE is like, based on your first experience, that you only have so much control, but you're deeply traumatized. And so controlling everything makes you feel safe. And it's a real catch-22. It's not clear how to navigate it. And all of us just kind of do the best we can. I think what's important is that you to the best of your ability provide whatever feels safest to you, and then and then life unfolds.
Yeah. And Sarah, I love that you can smile and laugh about especially that particular piece of your story. And we should maybe put that she was a doula in training, maybe.
She was a doula in training, because that's all we didn't need anything. She wasn't delivering. She wasn't doing anything medical. Again, we just needed a sportscaster. And I wish her the best of luck in her future endeavors, maybe outside the doula world.
Oh my goodness. Oh, yeah, I do. I love that you can smile about it and talk about it so openly and freely because, yeah, that control piece, there's little that you can control. And kind of leading into kind of some of those emotions and how do those emotions playing into wanting to control certain aspects or some of the fears, anxiety. Can you guys speak to a little bit of that on how that journey went from, those beginning phases of your pregnancy leading up to that delivery and, even after the delivery? How did those was it a roller coaster? And were you connecting, showing up for tasks and, all those different things that happen? If you could kind of talk about that.
Yeah, during pregnancy for me, I was, I wouldn't say I was disconnected, but I was, I was kind of just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was like waiting at every scan, like, is he still going to be alive? Is he going to be okay? Are they going to find something? I remember having a lot of worries about, I was holding my breath before each scan. And then, like the things like buying things in preparation for his birth or for the nursery. I didn't want to buy anything. I didn't want to prepare because I was like, anything can happen. So for me, that I needed to not really fully attach my heart with him until I knew he was going to live. And I know that sounds like kind of dark, but that was my experience of it. And then, once he was actually born, it was this perfect textbook, fast, amazing birth that went perfectly according to plan, and like the bliss of that golden hour, that you don't get with your HIE child was indescribable. And quickly following that was some of the deepest, darkest grief I've experienced because of what you mentioned, Sarah. It's just the realization of what you lost. And that part took me utterly by surprise, especially following like that intensive golden hour bliss, was to feel such loss with Oliver and to feel like, no, I don't want the HIE life. Like, I want this. Like, I want to hold my baby and breastfeed him and do all these things that like, normal. I know that I'm not trying to make anybody mad, but like, when the birth doesn't go traumatic, that's how it goes for mothers. That's what they get. And I felt a lot of loss, and just the hormones kind of coalescing made it very intense. And then I took my baby home and I just wanted to lay in bed with him. I didn't want to be a caregiver anymore. I didn't want to go back to the HIE life. I just wanted I wanted this life, And those were all super painful emotions to work through. And I try to talk about them whenever I'm mentoring people on this topic because it just took me by such surprise. And I could have used a heads up on that, Not that that's like going to be shared by everyone, but that was my experience.
Ugh, yeah, you get to lay them on your chest and have that skin to skin, and then it's just everything is quiet, and it's just you start to see black, you start to see red, you start to really go into the depths of your feelings, and it's awful, and you're questioning, why are you going to this? But it's valid and it's understandable. because we were not in the full caregiver role for our HIE kiddo, ours was, I still felt that I just wanted to be, we were able to go home from the hospital. We were asking to sign the paperwork to leave the hospital. We were like, get us out of here. We were like clawing at the walls. We were like, we're good. We know how to do, like, get us out, get us out, get us out, get us out. We're ready to go. We don't want to be here. We just need to go. And so we got home. We were discharged, everything. And so we like looked at each other and we said, okay, this is it. And we knew that this was our last one. There was no room for any others. This was it. This was all that was in the freezer. This is what we got. This is our family unit. And my husband looked at me and he goes, now we can start living. Now we can start our life. This is us. And so it was a lot of cuddles and a lot of this that we didn't have to worry about oxygen monitors. We didn't have to worry about all of that. And it was just, for us, it was this bliss after. And we were able to have those snuggles, which was wonderful. The pregnancy, on the other hand, I will say I got my first panic attack ever. That was bad. And we were watching a show or a movie and it caught me off guard. I knew the woman in the show was pregnant. It was obvious. And then she went into this horrific birth and I lost it. I couldn't breathe. My husband had to like carry me to the bathroom. I couldn't see straight. I had never had anything like that before, but that put me over the edge. Luckily, he was there. Luckily, he knew what to do. But I think those unexpected triggers that I just didn't realize were there and out there in the world for me, that was really eye-opening. And I'm so thankful that, my kid was taking a nap and didn't have to witness that, or I wasn't out in public, or I wasn't, it was just me and my husband. And it was a moment that I unfortunately almost had to experience, because I think it made us both stronger through the pregnancy. And it's just one of those things where you're just like, okay, well, we're in it. Here we go. What are we going to do? I'm 30 weeks pregnant and this is scary. But I also took the time to really connect with my HIE kiddo. And I found so many moments because I think I was so nervous with my second as well. I took the time to really just plan like little peanut butter and jelly picnic dates, or I just did like little things of just like reading for hours upon hours, and just being able to do that with him was really special. And I think that's what I remember most about my pregnancy, besides the ginormous ankles. Mm-hmm. I remember the time spent with Kieran the most, of just the little things, the little errands that we did where I get to spend just me and him. That really connected me more to him than ever before. And then I think it helped almost heal me in a way going into birth. And I don't know how, but I think I could have been a lot worse had I not had those moments to kind of help push me into delivery, push me into that birth. So I think he really helped that.
Well, thank you guys. Obviously, two different experiences, but in the end, lots of thoughts, lots of feelings, and sometimes conflicting feelings coming up simultaneously. And I can only just imagine how that is to, be going into something joyous. And I think, Susie, you explained it so well, and having that child laying upon your chest, but then transitioning into that that anger from the previous one, just having to sit with such conflicting feelings and emotions simultaneously has to be difficult. Sarah, you started touching on this, kind of like the parenting and the family dynamics. I guess, did you guys have any specific concerns about balancing the needs of, your HIE child with the needs of a new baby? And when the child was here, like, how have the sibling relationships evolved, and how do you just balance the needs, with both children and some of those pressures? I know, Susie, when we talked originally, you had talked a lot about like the societal judgment and stuff. So I would love for you to share some of your thoughts and insights on that. I found it very interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when families without disabled children decide to expand their families, there's not much societal judgment on that. Maybe for really large families or something, but for the most part, it's the decision between the couple, and that's a unique part of being an HIE family in my experience, is that when you talk about having another child, there are like a wide array of reactions to that. It's like, oh, well, would you risk that again? Or, well, how would you do that? Like, oh, well, isn't that going to be taking away from your disabled child's needs? Like, there are lots of reactions that really feel very unsupportive, but they're coming from genuine concern. I believe that, but it just adds a lot of voices to the decision-making process as to whether or not you're going to expand your family. And that is kind of unique in my experience to people with disabled children. There's just a lot of opinions that aren't necessarily helpful. And that was definitely, I had some of those experiences, and it makes it hard to be confident because you're already doing something that really scares you. And then if there's a lot of judgment around that, it can make it, can make it pretty hard. But what I always say is, like, just because you have a disabled child that doesn't take away your right to have the family that you always dreamed of. My husband and I, we envisioned having 2 children, and so when we felt able to make that happen, we followed through, because just because Oliver has disabilities doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve a sibling. It doesn't mean that we don't have a right to have the size family that we desire, but those are some of the more unique things that some people navigate in the HIE world, I think. And then just the logistics of, for me, with Oliver's care needs being pretty significant, I did wonder, like, how am I actually going to physically carry this 3-year-old who can't sit or walk or stand or anything, and then have a baby? Like, how's that going to work? And then, like, going shopping, how am I going to, there were a lot of logistics that confused me at first, but like anything else, you figure it out, especially now with social media and, all of these support networks. Like, you do figure it out, and it's overwhelming at first, but ultimately I think growing a family is generally a beautiful thing. It's more people to love and more of a unit. And like every other family, there'll be hard parts that you'll have to figure out, but it's definitely doable from my experience.
Yeah, I love that. I think the biggest thing we realize is just how strong our relationship had to be in order to even just understand what each other needed, as far as who needed to take, yes, there's 2 of us and now there's 2 kids, but who's going to take who and when is that going to happen? And I'm sure it's even more with when the needs are more. So to have those conversations ahead of time, as weird as it is huge. When there's more therapies involved, when there's more scheduling conflicts involved, when there's more tasks that are needed to be done. It's all part of it. But it gets done. It gets done. And it's beautiful. It's messy, but it's beautiful.
Have either of you found any unexpected joys along that process of whether it was planning or as you've seen the siblings grow up together?
So I'm in the thick of like the littles right now.
Sure.
I am really lucky in the sense of this like beautiful like sibling bubble of making their own language and having their own understanding of each other. And it's not always nice. It's not always, just sunshine and roses, but they work through it. And the best is when you see them holding hands, it's silent, but you look in the rear, the car mirror, and you see them holding hands. I mean, that they get each other. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say mine's been more it's a different situation for my boys. Oliver doesn't speak, and for a long time there really wasn't a whole lot of interaction between the 2 children. Okay. Just Nico was a really active kid and climbing on everything, and Oliver just kind of observed him. And so it wasn't as like typically sibling relationship. But what has been cool is to see the ways that Oliver's life has impacted Nico's views, and the ways that our family has gotten creative and like overcome obstacles in order to, make both boys like be able to get out on a biking trail, for example, or like, find ways to do things that are more typical, even with our limitations.
That's cool.
Wonderful. I love that. So here at Hope for HIE, we talk about support, and support comes in all different ways, shapes, forms, and from different people along the way. Are there any people that you felt that you leaned on more so during any different parts of that journey, whether during pregnancy or postpartum? How about sharing of the second pregnancy when you found out, and reactions from such?
I hid my pregnancy as long as I could. I tried. We weren't ready. We were scared. And I didn't know if I think we were scared for multiple reasons. I think we were scared of things not working out to viability. I think we were scared of the HIE aspect. We were scared of our trauma and grief. We were scared of, I don't even know if we were scared of judgments. I think we were just like, you know what? This is ours. This is ours. This is our news. We're going to deal with it the way that we need to and the way that we want to. And I don't know if we were ready for reactions, whether they were good or bad. So we just hit it as best as we could.
When you were ready, who were the first people you told, actually? Now I'm curious.
So then we started small and we told like our closest friends.
Oh, okay.
We told our closest friends. We started kind of like that ripple effect of, you know, our small little group of people that we, especially the ones that we knew that knew our journey and that knew our concerns, that knew. I also think we started with the ones that we knew would have more of the joyful reactions and have the positive and the support and everything else. And and then it finally got a little bit bigger and then a little bit bigger. And then I was like, okay, well, yeah.
Cats
Then
out.
everybody else can know. Yeah, now it's out. Now you can just hear through the grapevine at this point. So if you haven't heard, here it is. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot about, I don't remember a lot. I remember telling the person who reacted badly. That one's etched in my memory. It was one of Oliver's caregivers, and I told her, and she was like, What do you mean? Like, how are you gonna do that? You could barely take care of Oliver. Like, how are you gonna take? It was super negative, and it really was. It was a big impact, and I did. That was hard. But overall, like, all of our family and friends were super supportive. Other than that, so I don't remember there being any specific way I'm sure we told our family first, but yeah.
I guess once the second children were there, did you feel like, did you have your family and friends reaching out to you for more help than originally, or did you have the same community of friends and family?
I don't think mine changed much.
No,
I didn't. No, I think I had about the same type of support. Well, I had, I guess, maybe less support once I had the second one, because with Oliver, I had, like, you know, the palliative team and the social worker and the EI therapists, and, you know, there were suddenly there was this network that surrounded me after Oliver came home from the hospital. So I guess in a way I had less support at the second, but it's okay because it was like a happier, less catastrophic time, you know?
yeah.
And I had like just a close couple friends that would check in on me, and they would ask, what do you need? Do you want us to check in more? Do you not want us to, do you want us to let you be? What do you need from us? And I think that was really helpful. And these were friends that I appreciated. And I said, I need you to check in on me. I need you to just you can do this. You got this. How are you doing? Tell me one thing, you're fit, whatever it is. So that was really helpful, just to, hey, you got this. Because these are also friends that don't live close, that I don't see. So it was nice to get back in touch with them and just have them have that support. So it was nice to have that. So I would say, don't be afraid to reach out to that group and ask for that, because you're busy advocating for yourself, and that's part of advocating. And it feels good to have people check in on you. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it did feel good. So
I like that. Advocating for yourself, and even some of those, it doesn't always have to be the medical realm, but just for that emotional and supportive assistance.
Yeah.
Is there anything, looking back to, you know, prior to that subsequent pregnancy, is there anything you wish you had known? I guess, what would you want another HIE parent to hear? Is there one key takeaway that you would say to a family that is considering this next step? And I guess, what does moving forward look like for you guys now?
As far as the like a key takeaway. A lot of we've done these support groups for years now, the pregnancy after HIE, and such a common theme that comes up is people trying to just work through everything that could have gone wrong, everything that could have led to the HIE injury. And, you know, I've heard women talk about diet or supplements or stress or like all these pieces, you know, and I think there's all this pressure when you're operating in a traumatized brain that's facing this a similar situation again. We just really do want to do everything we can to control the outcome. And I think, you know, what I always try to say to those people is like, you can do what you can do. And that's great to eat healthy or do whatever makes you feel safe. But ultimately, like, you have to let yourself off the hook for that. It's guilt. It's feeling the weight of like, this is because of me. This is because of something I did. And I think that those types of worries and heavy feelings of guilt and responsibility can really kind of plague a pregnancy. At least that's what I've heard through those groups. And so I guess my takeaway is always to tell women to try to have grace for this thing that you are going through that's really hard. There are going to be conflicting emotions and thoughts that don't make any sense. And maybe there is going to be ways you feel or think that, you know, you feel guilty about, or you feel like that should be different. And my takeaway is just to try to give yourself as much grace and gentleness through this very difficult process. It takes a lot of bravery to face again, because it's, you know, it's not easy, and we're all doing the best that we can, you know.
Yeah.
I think to that point, grief is an ongoing journey. It will never just stop. It will never. I would love to say that it just will cure itself, but it's ongoing, and that's okay. But I also think grief is a journey and will show up in different ways for both you and your partner and your family. So I think it's important to check in as a family unit, really before taking the next step, to make sure that everybody's on board, as hard as that is. Because I know that I've seen things in the support group that one's ready and one's not. And how do we get the other one on board? And that's really, really hard. And because I know when you're ready and you're ready, but it's a beautiful thing to grow your family, but it's really a beautiful thing to grow your family together, because it can take a lot. And that grief can sneak in really sneaky ways. So it's valid and it's weird, but however it needs to be dealt with. There are multiple ways to deal with grief, but I do think checking in with all family members is also a good place to start as well.
Yeah, that's another thing that comes up a lot in those groups is the myth of the readiness of the partner.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of advice other than to keep talking it out, you know, go to therapy, get a party, get a whatever, a mentor, and just try to keep working through the details. It's a really hard situation.
It's really hard. But the last thing you want is to have that be a huge barrier and then to have to go through that with two different journeys happening.
Yeah.
That'd be hard.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of things in life, communication really is key, and, talking things through, and when it's not working with the dyad, to, bring in outside resources. And there's, like you had mentioned, therapists and counselors that can help navigate some of that, to just find that ground where both of you can feel comfort in. Because as you've shared, there's those ups and downs with those feelings at any given time and stuff. So making sure you're both on that same page will hopefully make that journey a little bit easier. And I just want to thank you guys so much for sharing your experiences with the community, with myself. I've very much enjoyed getting to know you just a little bit more and hearing these parts of your stories. You are amazing mothers, and just amazing community members for us. So I want to thank you. I would just like to ask, we usually end on, do you have any favorite resources at all? Just speaking from an HIE parent, are there any favorite HIE resource that you've come across or that has helped you along on your journey, whether it is in regards to that pregnancy after HIE or otherwise, that you would like to share?
I love the Facebook group. The Pregnancy After HIE Facebook group is great. Yep, that's what got me through. Yeah, I think it's a great resource.
I think so. And I hope to see more people continue to utilize it and ask, don't be afraid to ask questions. The people that are in that group likely have some of the same thoughts and fears and questions and hopes, and they're there. They came for a reason. So don't be afraid to ask a question and post and share some of the things that you would like to share with the group and what you're experiencing, because I can almost guarantee you're going to find someone that is feeling the same way or has felt the same way.
Yeah, for sure. The whole Hope for HIE network is an awesome place to stop in and ask your questions, get validation. I think that for all of its weaknesses, social media is also a great resource to watch other families doing things, watch how they do it, watch the more the logistics of having multiple children, one with maybe complicated disabilities. And then also, some of the resources that my family has used the most are really like state resources in terms of, when we lived in California, IHSS programs that can help buffer the costs of caregiving or needing to work, outside the home. Definitely.
Can I just clarify, IHSS, is that the waiver program through California?
It's different in so the IHSS is like in-home supportive services.
Okay, so that would be a similar way. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it pays the parent to be the giver, and then that can be used in different ways. Most states don't have IHSS for kids under 18. California did. But each state has its own, aid setup. And another one that we use a lot and that was extremely helpful in the process of growing our family is the respite resources, where you can have another person in your home, like that have the extra set of hands helping with, all the logistics of having multiple children, especially one with lots of extra tasks associated with them. So yeah, if you haven't tapped into those community resources, the government resources, I highly recommend them. They've been really supportive to our family for sure.
Hope for HIE is also has its own by state page. too. And so to be able to connect with people in the state, that would be a great place to ask those questions, get those agencies, and then hopefully even find the local play dates, the meetups, and meet those other families as well.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I know some of the state Facebook pages are not as active, but we're only as active as people participate. So, starting to ask more questions and reaching out in those capacities, sharing what resources you have found could help another family, or asking why struggle if another family has already done the work. Myself, the social worker here at Hope for HIE, you can always reach out to myself as well, and I would be more than happy to see if I can help you navigate some of those state-specific resources, because they can be very beneficial once you learn about them and look into some of the qualifying guidelines and such. But I am more than happy to connect with anybody to kind of explore what those might look like. Well, very good. Thank you guys so much for your time and your experiences that you've shared. And I wish your families all the luck in the world, and happy 2026.
Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.